Hey friends, and welcome back to the Raising Rice's YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Marissa, and I am a wife and a mom to a large growing family. We live here on a farm in southeast Idaho where we homeschool and build our life around faith and family and stewardship. And in today's video, it is a very personal video and honest and reflective that I really wanted to share with you guys. It is on my experience on having a baby after a uterine rupture. And this is something that when I was walking through this myself, when I was searching and trying to find stories and accounts for encouragement on the subject, there honestly wasn't a lot out there that felt honest and hopeful. So probably because it's a very rare situation, and that just propelled me to want to share my story with you guys even more so. So my prayer today is that this video would be just that for someone who is searching and looking for some encouragement on the issue. So here we're going to break it into a couple parts. First part is what happened when I had a uterine rupture, because I think before I share my most recent birth story, I think it's important to just briefly share the backstory to what happened. A uterine rupture is exactly what it sounds like. It's when the wall of the uterus tears during pregnancy or labor. Mine was during labor. And it's very, very rare, like I mentioned before, but it is super serious and it can be life-threatening for both the mom and the baby. And in my case, this happened during an attempt at a VBAC. It was unexpected, it was intense, and it required immediate medical intervention. And like many women who walk through something like that, there is obviously physical recovery. It took me like 30 days to feel like I could get off the chair and off the bed. And we're not talking about that 6 week that everyone should take to recover. We're talking about like functioning. So it was really intense. A lot of inflammation when it came with my uterine rupture. But there's also another element, like a mental and emotional processing that comes after a uterine rupture. You find yourself asking questions like, what does this mean for the future, for future pregnancies? Is it safe? Is it even safe to get pregnant again? What are the risks involved? And what is wise moving forward? So let's jump now into part 2, where I answer a few of those questions for myself and what happened as I worked through this with my OB and the option of a future pregnancy. So in this part 2, I want to kind of talk about, walking into another pregnancy. And what happened was after the uterine rupture, we went to my OB and we're like, what's the plan? Like, what does this mean? This is new. This is rare. How do we move forward? And he talked to us a lot about how long the uterus takes to come back. And once it does, he was the one that did the surgery. Once it does, there's could be scarring, so that could affect future pregnancies and future deliveries. And he said to us, if you are able to get pregnant again, if this is your desire, there will be no attempt at a VBAC, right? There will be no natural birth. In fact, he doesn't even want you to go into labor. So it would be a scheduled C-section. And at the time, he said 36 weeks, can't be any later than 36 weeks, so that we can totally lessen the chance of any contractions happening in my body that would stimulate another rupture or aggravate the uterus. So he talked to us about how the uterus is like a balloon, right? And so when it's growing in its initial stages of pregnancy, it's very slow, building, expanding. But then when the contractions come, that's when the pressure gets put on it. He also mentioned something else that was interesting towards for information towards the end of a pregnancy, is that your uterus is kind of, we picture it like a circle, but it's more like an oval, like an egg. And so when the baby is head down or head up, there's not a lot of pressure on the uterus. But when the baby is transverse, when it is pushing against the sides of that oval uterus, that's when some more uncomfortableness comes in. So we were excited for the opportunity of a chance. We said to each other, so you're telling me there's a chance, right? So we're excited for the opportunity that there's a chance moving forward that we could get pregnant, but we'll have to see. Again, there was a lot of trauma on my body, a lot of inflammation, a lot of potential scarred tissue, all these things. And so we moved forward just trusting God with the plan. And when we found out that we were expecting again, there was definitely a mix of emotions. Joy, of course, right? Totally. Children are a blessing from the Lord and they are a gift. And we were so excited. But also there was kind of like this weight of responsibility. I knew that this pregnancy would be considered high risk from the very beginning because of what we learned from our OB. And I had to make the decision, not from fear, but from wisdom. And that meant asking, like, what has God entrusted to me in this situation? And how do I steward my body well? How do I care for this baby wisely? And I will say this clearly, that there's no one size fits all answers here. They're very, prayer is needed as you move forward and walk through this. But for me, this meant working closely with a provider. And some of you might be like, duh, but if you know my history, I now have 8 children, and the first 5, I did work with a midwife, and we had home births, and it was very hands-off. Number 6, I had a vasoprevia, bleeding out, rushed to the hospital, delivery at 34 weeks, so preemie, NICU. It was like total opposite from the first 5. And then baby number 7 was my uterine rupture as I was attempting a VBAC. And the Lord provided with that uterine rupture too. We knew that we wanted to be in a hospital setting instead of in a home birth setting because it was an attempt at a VBAC. And we wanted to be in it for us in an environment that felt safe for the unknown. So this baby, we wanted to work closely with the provider, being monitored. Also, I'm up there in age, and so that played a factor. And just being willing to adjust expectations for the sake of safety. Still remaining in our convictions, but adjusting expectations. So let's move into part 3. The mental and spiritual battle. I think one of the biggest parts of this journey wasn't even physical. Although it all began physical, it was very spiritual and mental for me. A lot of emotions involved in it. And there can be this like temptation to either live in fear or to swing the other direction and just ignore wisdom. But scripture definitely calls us to something different, right? We are not ruled by fear. We are only to fear the Lord, and we are called to walk in wisdom. And I had to just continually surrender the pregnancy to the Lord and the future delivery to the Lord as well, to trust that He is sovereign over my body and over this baby. And also just to remember that I am still responsible to act wisely with what He has given me. I'm still to steward it well. And that tension between trust and responsibility was something that I lived with daily. And those that walked this journey with me know that I lived with it daily and were such great prayer supports to me in this walk. All right, the time you've been waiting for. Part 4, the plan for delivery. So I kind of alluded to a little bit of this earlier, but just to walk through it in generalities, because of the previous rupture, the plan for delivery had to look completely different, and especially different from my earlier births. There was this clear need to avoid labor due to the increased risk, as I mentioned, of the rupture. But for me, hearing that it needed to be a scheduled C-section at 36 weeks felt extremely early, especially since usually I went to like 41, even 42 weeks. It felt like extremely early, thinking about the 36-week mark. And I really had to like submit that to the Lord and to pray through that continually. And I just want to pause really fast here and say something important, that something that I've learned through my 8 births, that birth does not define your worth as a mother. And I think that maybe some of you need to hear that. The goal is not a specific type of birth. The goal is faithfulness. Right? Faithfulness and how we steward what God has given us. Faithfulness, wisdom, responsibility. And for me, this meant embracing the surgical, right? The surgical birth with gratitude, not disappointment. Because I definitely found myself with baby number 6 when I had the C-section, feeling disappointed and grieving the loss of an experience that I had previously had. And it was really good for me to walk through that and to rely on the Lord through it all. There is some exciting news. As I said, 36 weeks was my doctor's cutoff. He said no longer than 36 weeks. And as we grew closer to that 36-week mark, I just kept praying, Lord, please just, I entrust to you whatever you have planned for me, and I am submitting to this new way of birth this time. But I pleaded with the Lord. I said, could we go to 37 weeks, please, Lord? I just feel like the lungs would be so much more developed. There'd be a less chance of NICU time. Like, if you think I can do it, Lord, please, help me find a way. And I am at 34 weeks, 32 weeks, and I go into the doctor's appointment, and we're about to schedule the C-section, schedule the date. And the doctor's like, well, I think we could probably do, February 2nd. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because my 36 weeks was January 20th. He was presenting me with an option of an extra 10 days, and that would bring me into the 37-week mark. And I was thrilled and terrified. It's not so funny. That's exactly what I've been praying for. And I was terrified about going an extra 10 days, but the Lord provided in a great, great way for me. And I was just so excited and so blessed. So let's move into part 5, the birth experience. Going into the birth, there was some calmness because you know it's coming. You have your prayer warriors, your biblical family, they're supporting you. You have a plan, right? But there's also a weight of pressure, a weight of unknown. Even though I've had 2 previous C-sections at this point, both of them were traumatic, rushed, and not planned. And so this was different. I'm setting my alarm clock. I'm going into the hospital. I'm getting checked in. We're going through the questions. It's totally different. So the more you understand the risk, right? But you also can see God's hand more clearly as well. And the delivery itself, it was smooth. Like I said, we checked in. We got there at 5 a.m. That was a little early. But we got there at 5 a.m. for a 7 o'clock C-section time appointment. And they're doing all the things. Darren's putting on, my husband, his surgical outfit to go to the C-section, and we're laughing and we're taking pictures, and it was just so different. The team was super prepared, and they were attentive, and they were aware of my history, which was really helpful. During my uterine rupture, my OB, who I originally had been seeing for this full 42 weeks, was in another C-section when my uterus ruptured, and had to call a partner OB, and he came in, and he like I said, he was prepared in that he had the skills, but he walked into a mess. He walked into a crazy situation, did wonderfully. But this time, I used the same OB who did my last surgery. He came in, checked on me, checked on the team. Everyone was just ready to roll. It was totally different. And by God's grace, our baby girl was delivered safely, healthy, crying right away, perfect, didn't have to go to the NICU. That was a big prayer of mine. And in that moment, there was just so much overwhelming gratitude, not because of everything went according to my plan, but because the Lord was faithful. And it was such a different moment for us in that C-section compared to the others. There was some blessings that were found inside of the whole experience. The anesthesiologist knew my husband because my husband had done per diem work at the hospital. So they got to chat, and the doctor, my OB, said that he was shocked. He said there was totally way less scar tissue down in my uterus and than he expected there to be. And he was the one that did the last surgery. So he was like, hey, that turned out great. So that was such a gift from the Lord. The baby girl, Adelaide, we named her, got to snuggle with me with my last 2 C-sections. Both of the babies went to the NICU right away. I didn't even get to see my baby for like 12 hours. And then my husband went with baby, and so I was all alone. This was not the case this time. The 3 of us got to stay together the whole time. It was such a blessing. I did get nauseous. I was definitely nauseous and embarrassingly, did what nauseous people do. But it was probably the worst of it. I'm okay with that, right? So part 6 here, I want to just talk quickly about recovery and reflection of the whole experience. Recovery after this kind of birth carries, again, that physical and emotional layer. And I just want to bring that up because I think it's really important for us not to forget about the emotional, spiritual side of birth and side of recovery. And there's definitely healing that happens from surgery. Like I said, there is really, your body's been through so much, right? And you can watch a ton of videos on what happens during a C-section. But there's also reflection, like looking back and seeing where God sustained you, where he gave you wisdom, where he provided the right people at the right time. And I think that one of the biggest takeaways for me was this, that our bodies are not something to control completely. They are something to steward faithfully and to surrender to the glory of God alone. As far as recovery to a C-section, this time, as I mentioned, was completely different than the previous. Uterine ruptures, you have a lot of inflammation, a lot of swelling, a lot of trauma happening in that region, and it hurts to move. It hurts everything. Everything hurts. And this time, I had the C-section Monday morning, and I got to go home Tuesday night. And I wasn't even on like narcotics or anything at that time. I was just on like ibuprofen and Tylenol. It was just totally different this time. And I had to be reminded to rest and to slow down because I was like, this is amazing in comparison to what I experienced. But same recovery as any C-section for me this time. Praise the Lord. And then in this part 7, I want to talk about some encouragement to other moms. So if you're watching this, like I mentioned way in the beginning, I couldn't find a lot of information out there about people who had experienced a uterine rupture and then went forward to have another baby after that. And so I want to provide you just the story, the encouragement, and you take it and you do it what you will. But so if you're watching this and you've experienced a uterine rupture, I'm with you. Solidarity, right? Or maybe you've been told that your next pregnancy is really high risk. And again, I'm with you. Solidarity. I just want to gently encourage you with a few things as we wrap up this video. One, you are not alone, right? I mean, your story is not over. And fear does not have to be the voice that leads you. I would just encourage you to seek wise counsel, to get second opinions, even if you need to. Ask a lot of questions. Sometimes I was embarrassed to ask the question because I felt like my body failed. But no, ask the questions. And most importantly, as you're being informed in these decisions, informed in the information that you're getting from your doctors, most importantly, anchor yourself in truth. There's going to be a lot of information flying at you from different providers, even from this video today. today, and you need to return to truth. And I'm talking about biblical truth. I'm talking about God is sovereign over every detail of your life, every detail of your story, and you are called to walk faithfully, not fearfully. So, thank you so much for being here and allowing me just to share my story. And part of this whole video is to encourage you. It's to uplift you. And if you've walked through a similar journey as I have, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Because like I said, there's not a lot out there. And so I'd love to hear from you. And if you know of another mom who might really need this encouragement, please share this video with them. I'd be so grateful. And I'm so grateful, again, for this community that we are developing here at the Raising Rice's YouTube. And go ahead and subscribe if you're new. It's a great community to be a part of. Lots of videos about faith and family and farming even, and birth, right? So I'll see you in the next video.